Imagine this scene. It's the middle of the day in El Asyut. The air's warm, thick of that earthy smell of the poultry he just dropped off. 30-year-old Khamis is sitting there. They've offered him a drink, this really syrupy, sweet juice. He's just there for a simple task, albeit a frustrating one. Like a debt that's been outstanding for way too long. So he drinks. But underneath that sweetness, there's this faint bitterness. Pharmaceutical almost, but he doesn't really register it. Not immediately. Then, maybe 15 minutes later, the room starts to shift. The faces he knows, Latifa, her daughters Shaymaa and Mona, they start to blur a little. This sudden, heavy disorientation just washes over him. Khamis tries to get up, shake off this weird lethargy, but his body just isn't responding right. His vision's swimming. But he looks up one last time at the three women. He later recalled their expressions. Fixed, deeply unsettling, cold. And in that sickening moment, it hits him. He wasn't there to collect money. He'd walked straight into a trap.
Yeah, it's just the ultimate betrayal, and it's rooted in this really terrifying contradiction. You have Khamis, this guy everyone liked, trusted. He spent a whole decade building his business purely on credit, on good faith, and yet he's executed brutally, premeditated, by the very clients he trusted most. And not over some big business dispute. No, it was over wounded pride, basically. The price tag on his life, just 11,000 Egyptian pounds.
Okay, let's really unpack this then. This is the deep dive into the Asyut murders, a truly chilling story about how three women put perceived status, this misplaced pride, ahead of a man's life, all for 11,000 EGP. So, Khamis. He was 30, an itinerant vendor, working hard in the Al-Badari Center, sold a bit of everything: clothes, appliances, poultry, ducks, all on installment plans. People knew him as incredibly kind. He was supporting his wife, his daughter, his elderly parents, all through this business that relied on flexibility. His whole system was built on trust. He kept meticulous records, every payment, every debt in this big ledger book at home.
Right. And then you have Latifa and her two daughters, Shaymaa and Mona. Latifa was the head of the household since her husband died a couple of years back. Now, outwardly, to the village, she was just another customer. Maybe a bit difficult, but still. But there was this hidden truth about her finances. Her husband had worked in Saudi Arabia for years, right? And he left her quite well off. A big plot of land, a house with multiple floors, and crucially, a bank transfer of 2 million Egyptian pounds. Let's be clear, that's a lot of money. They were financially secure. Despite all this, Latifa was Khamis's most problematic client, always delaying payment on this 11,000 EGP debt. For 7 years, she dragged it out, always claiming she had no money.
7 years?
Yeah.
That's an incredibly long time to carry a debt like that, especially when it's your working capital needed to support your own family. So eventually, Khamis had to do something. He needed to protect his business. He had to make it more formal with Latifa. He took a step that was purely professional, really. He had her sign a promissory note. It's called the Wasl Amana there.
Exactly, and this is where things really changed, legally and emotionally. A Wasl Amana isn't just some casual IOU. Under Egyptian law, it's serious. It's a receipt of trust. If you default on it, a civil debt can instantly become a criminal matter. It basically meant Latifa formally acknowledged that 11,000 EGP wasn't just something she owed, it was a legal obligation she couldn't just ignore.
Okay, and here's where it gets, really mind-boggling. Despite pleading poverty, despite dodging this now serious legal note, Khamis finds out just how hypocritical Latifa was being. He discovers she's actually building a third floor onto her house, a project costing something like 200,000 EGP. Wait a minute, 200,000 EGP for construction while refusing for 7 years to pay 11,000. They committed murder over what was essentially pocket change for them.
Precisely. That's the core of it. The refusal wasn't about the money itself, not about lacking funds. It was about pride, about control, about not being dictated to by a vendor. This huge disparity, spending a fortune on the house while stonewalling on a minor, legally binding debt, that's what sparks the final, fatal confrontation.
So Khamis goes straight to her house. And the argument, it wasn't quiet. It was heated, loud, public, basically. He confronts Latifa, calls her out on the construction project, demands she finally settle up. She refuses. So he does what he probably felt he had no choice but to do. He threatens to take that Wasl Amana straight to the police the very next day. And the crucial detail here, neighbors heard it. The whole loud argument. And both daughters, Shaymaa and Mona, they were right there watching Khamis, apparently with this really cold, silent intensity.
And that public argument, his loud voice being heard outside their house, that became their justification, at least the one they gave later. The three women get together right after Khamis leaves. Their rationale, which came out in their testimonies, was all about how Khamis had dishonored them because he was loud. Because neighbors heard. It was perceived as this huge slight against the family status, their reputation in the village.
I still find that hard to swallow, though. A loud voice is the sole reason. It feels like there must have been this deeper resentment festering over those 7 years of dodging the debt.
Oh, absolutely. The 7 years laid the groundwork, no doubt. That constant pressure, the evasion, it built resentment on both sides, I imagine. But the public confrontation, that was the tipping point. The immediate, unforgivable offense in their eyes. For a family that seems to have been wealthy but maybe trying to project even more status, being publicly shamed by a vendor over a small debt, intolerable. They couldn't just pay him then. That would almost validate his challenge to their authority, their image. So instead, the decision was made. Khamis must be taught a lesson. He had to disappear. Completely. The murder was about protecting that facade, that reputation, far more than it was about the 11,000 EGP itself.
The planning that followed was just so meticulous, so cold. Exactly 1 week after the argument, Shaymaa calls Khamis. She sounds friendly, apparently. Tells him they're finally ready to pay the whole debt. The lure was simple. Bring some poultry, she asks, and this is key. Bring the promissory note so she could tear it up once he was paid.
Right, and while Shaymaa's making that call, the others are getting things ready. Mona, the younger daughter, is out in the garden digging a hole. A large hole. Sized for a man, Shaymaa prepares the juice, laces it heavily with sleeping pills, sedatives, and Latifa, the mother, the matriarch, she's finalizing the logistics, making sure everything's in place for what's about to happen.
So Khamis arrives on his motorcycle, completely unsuspecting. He didn't tell anyone where he was going specifically, and the first thing Shaymaa does is tell him to bring the motorcycle inside their compound. Says she's worried about it being stolen. A totally false concern, of course. But it gets him and his bike completely inside. Trapped.
He drinks the juice they offer him. And then about 15 minutes later, as the drugs start taking hold, he has that awful moment of clarity. He realizes what they've done, what's happening. Even as he's slipping into unconsciousness, Latifa is apparently still focused purely on the money, pressing him about where the promissory note is.
He tries to fight it. Tries desperately to stand up, to get out of there, even as the drugs are paralyzing him. But he's too slow, too weak. Before he can even take a step, Shaymaa attacks him with a big club or a heavy stick, hits him over the head, on his back, again and again, until he just collapses onto the floor, unconscious. And the really horrifying part, confirmed later by the medical examiner, even after that savage beating, Khamis was still alive.
Yeah, and this is where it moves from a brutal assault into something else, something deeply disturbing. It's like a post-mortem preparation, but on a living person. Latifa goes and gets supplies they had already prepared, a big roll of rope, 2 large sacks, adhesive tape. They work fast. Efficiently, they bind the unconscious Khamis completely, head to toe, secure him tightly with the rope. Then they pull the 2 sacks over his entire body, tape his mouth shut, and reinforce all the bindings, just completely packaged.
But they weren't taking any chances. They needed to be absolutely sure. Latifa, the leader here it seems, performs the final act herself. She strangles the already bound, unconscious Khamis, making certain he was dead before they moved on to the burial.
The cleanup afterwards shows just how terrifyingly planned this was. The 3 of them carry the body out to the hole Mona had dug earlier. They bury him, cover the grave with stones to make it look undisturbed. Shaymaa immediately takes Khamis' mobile phone, drives to the nearest canal and throws it in, gets rid of the main way he could be tracked. Meanwhile, Mona hides the motorcycle in their chicken farm area, gathers tools. The plan is to dismantle it piece by piece and dispose of it later, probably in the same canal.
The psychological detachment needed for what happens next is, well, it's staggering. All of this, the murder, the binding, the burial, it's finished by about 1:00 p.m., and the switch back to normal life is instantaneous. Mona just goes off to her afternoon lesson like nothing happened. Latifa and Shaymaa stay home, prepare lunch, eat lunch, as if they just spent the morning doing chores. 1 minute, they're burying a man they just murdered in their garden. The next, they're making sandwiches. It suggests this terrifying ability to just compartmentalize, or maybe a complete lack of empathy.
That evening, around 10:00 p.m., Khamis' family knows something is seriously wrong. They report him missing. They stress to the police this is completely unlike him, his phone being off, not contacting anyone, unheard of. They emphasize he was reliable, punctual, he didn't have any known enemies, no ongoing conflicts they were aware of. They were certain something terrible had happened.
The police start investigating. They begin at Khamis' house, looking for clues. And they find the key pretty quickly, that meticulous financial ledger he kept. The agenda leads them through his clients, his debts, and it points them to the last active debtor who owed a significant sum. A woman listed as Ahmed, owing 11,000 EGP. A quick check identifies Ahmed. It's Latifa.
So 3 days after Khamis disappeared, the police show up at Latifa's house, and the women's reaction is described as unnerving. They're calm, cool, collected. They stick rigidly to the story they'd obviously rehearsed. Yes, Khamis came by, he collected his money, left the poultry he brought. He left around 1:00 p.m. End of story. But the police officers felt something was off. Something wasn't right. They specifically noted the daughter's stares. Difficult, suspicious. Maybe that same unsettling intensity Khamis himself saw in his final moments.
The real breakthrough comes when the investigators dig a bit deeper in the community and learn about that loud public argument Khamis had with the family just a week before he vanished. That raises serious red flags. They get a search warrant and go back for a thorough inspection. The main house is clean, nothing seems out of place, but then they move to check the poultry farm area on the property. And that's where they find it. Damning evidence. Remnants of a motorcycle, tools specifically for dismantling machinery. And in that exact moment, watching the police find these items, Mona panics. Her reaction is visible, undeniable. It confirms their suspicions on the spot.
And once they're confronted with this evidence, the united front just crumbles instantly. It becomes a blame game. Latifa is charged. Shaymaa immediately confesses, but maybe trying to shield her mother, she claims she did it all herself, acted entirely alone. Latifa and Mona initially go along with that, pointing the finger only at Shaymaa, but under more intense questioning, Shaymaa breaks. Maybe she realizes she's about to take the fall for everyone. She changes her story and implicates all three of them.
The police then excavate the garden, recover Khamis' body from that shallow grave. The medical examiner's report confirms the grim sequence of events. High levels of sedatives found in his system. Multiple bruises, contusions all over his body from the beating. A severe blow to the head that fractured his skull. And the ultimate cause of death, strangulation.
But the forensics revealed something else, a detail even more unsettling in a way than the murder itself. The medical examiner specifically noted the method used for binding the body. The knots, the way the rope and sacks were applied, it wasn't clumsy, not panicked work by first-timers. It was professional, meticulous. It required a specific kind of knowledge, a practice technique. The report suggested that this method indicated they were likely not first-time killers.
That detail is just chilling. It implies a skill set you don't just pick up. Knowledge of knots, binding techniques, it suggests something more. Maybe military background, medical training, or, disturbingly, a history of dealing with bodies before.
Exactly. It completely shifts how you see them, doesn't it? It elevates them from seemingly desperate debtors lashing out over pride to something more like organized, proficient operators. And their complete lack of remorse during their testimonies seems to back that up. They genuinely appeared to believe Khamis deserved what he got, because he dared to challenge them, dared to threaten the pride of this wealthy, apparently untouchable family. Latifa even tried one last, absolutely desperate and repulsive lie to the police, claiming Khamis had tried to assault her. A final attempt to justify the unjustifiable.
That stark contrast really is the heart of this whole tragic story, isn't it? A truly heinous, meticulously planned murder. Drugging, beating, strangling, burying a man who was, by all accounts, a decent member of his community. All committed to avoid paying 11,000 EGP, an amount that was trivial to them, given their actual wealth. They killed to protect a reputation that was itself built on a lie of needing that money. For these crimes, Latifa, Shaymaa, and Mona, the women now known as the Asyut debt murderers, were convicted. They were sentenced to death in 2017.
But it leaves you with this really disturbing question, doesn't it? Especially given that level of coordination, the careful planning of the disposal, and particularly that very specific professional binding technique the examiner noted. What else might this family have done? Is it possible Khamis wasn't the first? Were there other secrets, other acts of violence, hidden beneath that quiet, respectable, well-off facade? Or did they simply possess skills that point to a much darker, perhaps unrelated history? Something for you to definitely mull over.